is William, and I would like to welcome you to my woods. This channel is for me to document my journey, where I've been, where I'm at, and where I'm going. It's also going to be for me to, share what I believe and encourage healthy, constructive debate with anybody watching. Now, I try to go into every situation in life with an open mind. And I encourage all of you to do the same, especially with this channel. Remove, or at least try to remove, as many or as much bias from your opinions going into this video, going into the rest of my videos, and the rest of your life. Because, and this isn't a new take, I'm not claiming to be brilliant by saying this, but change is the only constant in life. Nothing lasts forever, nothing stays the same forever. We are taught that by the mountains. And when faced with a change, you can choose to grow in a couple different directions, or you can choose to stay stagnant right here. But that is a change because the world around you doesn't care. The world around you is going to change regardless, so by choosing to stay the same, that is another choice for change. Then again, typically I have found that it is not the most productive choice. Try to think of someone who hasn't grown in the past couple months, 2 years, 5 years, 10. If they haven't changed, they haven't grown. You can't grow without change. Think about working out. You will not get stronger. You can stay the same with a relative amount of struggle, but you will not grow. You will not get stronger unless you're putting yourself in uncomfortable situations, testing your limits, testing your strength, or in cases like this, testing your beliefs. Reconsider what you have known. It will make you feel stupid. It will make you feel lost. But it's the only way to grow. And I have met people who have grown less in the past 20 years than I have in the past couple months. And that scares me, not only because there are people out and about teaching people, there are people voting, there are people who just exist and interact with others that choose not to grow, or at least are unaware of the fact that they need to. And that scares me because those people have an impact on the world and all future people. And if we're not encouraging growth, there's my dog over there. If we're not encouraging growth, we're not getting smarter, we're not getting more knowledgeable, we're not getting kinder. And I see that a lot. And it scares me that I may become that one day. That eventually I'll get comfortable in my ways and that I'll think, oh, I've got it all figured out, and I'll stop trying. And then I think for like 4 seconds, and I realize that I will never become that because there are so many lessons to learn. There are so many stories, so many morals of those stories that have ever been told, and it would take lifetimes to learn from all of those stories. It would take lifetimes to learn from all the things happening right now in this moment, and things will keep happening. More stories will be written, and so you will never have a limited supply of things to learn from. However, if I do get stuck in my ways, and then I think I'm done, y'all need to say something. Or whoever's watching this has got to come find me and be like, hey, why'd you stop learning? Why'd you stop trying? Why did you stop fighting to become more knowledgeable? Because there's so much to learn, and I'm so excited to learn it. I don't know shit, and that's awesome. That's so exciting to me that I get to learn shit. Anyway, here's what I've learned. It's a lot. And it's nothing at all. So we'll start with what you guys need to know. Here's where I have been. I was raised Catholic, and I was pretty active in the church until about 12. I received my first communion, went to Sunday school. I think I did an extra class on Wednesdays because I wanted it. I wanted to learn. I wanted to know God. But because I was a kid, I never was able to understand it. And that's why I think kids shouldn't be not allowed, but they shouldn't be encouraged to come to churches by their parents, by the church, because it's nearly impossible for an adult, let alone a child, to comprehend God. I'll talk about that in another video, though. There were also a lot of things that I was told that I was doing wrong as a child. I was told that I was sinning. I was told that I was a sinner, that there was something inherently wrong with me and with the actions that I was doing as a child. And so I would pray and I would plead to this God that I didn't know. I would ask for help with the things that I was doing wrong. But I was a kid. I shouldn't have had that burden of guilt placed onto me. Because in Catholicism, you don't get forgiven by yourself and by God. You get forgiven through confessional with a priest. By doing what they say, you can earn forgiveness. Not through changing as a person, because they can't monitor that change. Only you can monitor that change. But that was something I came to realize way later. Things I noticed at the time were the hypocrisy. I had a friend, he was a great Christian, and he still exemplifies a lot of great teachings of Christianity. And I would argue he is a better Christian than the people who kicked him out of the church. In middle school, this was about middle school, he came out as gay. And he lost a lot of friends. His family stopped treating him how they used to. He got ostracized from the church, and at the time I was friends with a lot of gay people, and I figured this wasn't a community I wanted to be a part of anymore. A community that spreads hate. That's not what it's intended to do, but that was all that I had seen. I had felt it, I had seen it, and I had never felt God. This coupled nicely with my growing knowledge and interest in politics and seeing the corruption that happens at greater levels and across churches throughout the world. The disgusting actions of people in positions of authority in the church. That was really cool. But those friends that I had, the gay ones, shockingly were atheist / agnostic. That's a joke. But they were your stereotypical church is lame. And I was like, yeah, church is lame. And they bullied me out of Catholicism, which I'm endlessly thankful for. And before you click off, if you're Christian and you're like, fucking, this guy doesn't even like God. Wait. If you can't wait, you proved my point earlier. But please, give me a second. Let me explain my story. So that was in about middle school, and after, a couple months of not identifying as Christian or Catholic, I knew, I could feel that I had a lack. I could feel that there was something I was missing, and that was a God. That was God. And I have always lived out in here, in these woods, and that formed the basis of my next, 4 or 5 years, 4 years, what am I talking about? Where I would come out here, find a log just like this one. Hi. And I would sit I would usually take my dog, but sometimes I wouldn't, and I would just come out here and I would sit 30 minutes to an hour, and I would meditate. Sometimes I would just sit, sometimes I would sit with my legs crossed, sometimes I would hug a tree, sometimes I would kneel and with my head on the ground, and that kind of begun my practice of meditation. I developed that position. I really liked it. That was the way I felt closest to the earth. I always like to have at least 3 points of contact with nature: hand, head, feet, hands, whatever. And there was this symbol I would make on the ground. It, to me, signified moving forward and growth, like I said earlier. That wasn't something I recognized at the time, but I felt it. It also is a little heart, which, to me, love is the most important tenet of who I am and my different beliefs that I've held over the years. And I've only begun to recognize that recently. And I just made this up one day while I was meditating, and I was like, I like that. And over time, I kind of realized what it meant to me. During that time, I also was trying to learn about Taoism and a couple other Eastern religions, and one of those was Islam. I did Ramadan one year, and I loved it, but I didn't really understand I knew the reasons behind it, but I didn't feel it. And so I would like to do that again with more knowledge. I've got a Quran here that I'm starting to read. Anyway, we'll talk about that later. Cut to the first half of my senior year. I was struggling. My mental health was at an all-time low. I didn't have any friends. The ones I did have were part of this disgusting group of 30 people who all hated each other. The group is disgusting, the people weren't. Well, the people caused a lot of the struggle that I had. I don't hate them at all, but their actions definitely hurt me. But I'm glad that they did. I'm glad everything went the way it did, because I'm here now. Anyway. So I got kicked out of that friend group because of rumors and because people just didn't like me. I was annoying. I knew that. I know that. But once I'd gotten out of that friend group, I hurt the only person who still loved me demonstrably. And at that point, I felt completely alone. I had my parents, but I was alone. It was during this time that I knew something needed to change. The first of which was therapy. I started doing intensive therapy 3 or 4 days a week with, I think, 2 different therapists at one point for about a month, learning coping skills, learning how to better take care of myself. And then I started psychoanalyzation. And my psychoanalyst has been probably the most impactful person in who I am today. And I cannot thank him enough for all that he has done for me. And then I joined an equally weird group of friends who was also messy, and there was just a lot of weird relationships and weird power dynamics, and it was a mess, but my mental health was improving. However, I was not growing as a person. I was not improving. My mental health was better surface level, but I was still depressed. And I was also smoking a lot of weed. And that's what these 2 books are, stories from that time. And that'll be important later. That'll be important later. I didn't just bring that up for no reason. That will be important later. But yeah, I was still depressed. I was struggling a lot, and the way I coped with that was making art. Here are some of the pieces I did during that time. Warning to anyone who's sensitive to self-harm, anything along those lines. Some of it's hard to look at if you're sensitive to how other people are feeling. Not really much graphic content, but there is some. There was one especially bad night where I think I was on Prozac at the time, and I was just torn apart. I felt schizophrenic. I could hear my heartbeat throughout my entire body. I could feel it throughout my entire body. I could hear it. We live in the woods. There's mice in my walls, and that was not helping. I was just so totally alone from the friend group as well that I made a couple pieces that I'll show to you in a minute. But the next morning, the second biggest change for good happened. I was talking to my friend, and we only talked a couple times before. We were friends from class, but he invited me to church. And I was like, oh, that's kind of weird. He's never really, like I knew he went to church, but I don't know. It was an odd time to invite me. However, here was what I made the night before. Sitting in class the next period, I was looking back at it, and I reread it, and I realized what I had written. Originally, I wrote it as a metaphor for my friends not caring, not hearing my prayers, and as a callback to how I felt in Catholicism. However, this was too crazy of a coincidence for it to be that. A coincidence. There was no way in my mind that I could let this situation pass me by. So even though at the time when he invited me, in my head, I was like, whatever, like, church is lame, I'm still super cool, I wanted to go. I accepted his invitation and I knew I wanted to go. And it was too crazy of a coincidence for me not to. So, a week later, September 16th, it's a Saturday, me and my friends got together and we decided to do mushrooms. This isn't a crazy story of how I met God while I was on mushrooms, but it is. At least. Come here. Are you, oh, you ready to go? Go free. Free. Go, go. 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 Go free. Go. But it is. That is what the story is. When I took them, I didn't really feel anything. I felt a little bit lighter, a little bit happier. And once they started to kick in, bantering with my friends, most of the other people went to sleep, and it was me and my best friend. And he points to everybody else. There's like 3 other people there, or 2 other people. And he says, no matter what happens with them, I'm here for you. I'm here to help you grow. I love you. And he hugs me. And in that moment, I finally understood what love felt like. I had never before understood that what I felt when somebody hugged me, that how I felt when I was out here meditating, I never understood that was love. But that's exactly what it was. And so the next day, I wake up, oh man, so tired, oh my gosh. Oh, and I've got to go to church. So I get there, I sit down, and they start talking about how I'm forgivable, how God is loving, God is love, and how I always, foremost, am forgiven and I am loved. And that, in that moment, I felt exactly how I did the night before with my best friend hugging me. And that was the pivotal moment of the next year of my life. And I am so thankful that all of those events coincided and allowed me to find God, find real God. I had found him out here. I knew what God was, but now I had a name for it, and now I had a place to start. I could finally begin the first of my journeys of teaching myself, of learning religion. I had always wanted to learn from different religions. Something I still want to do is live with Native Americans, a couple different tribes, and learn from them. But this was a good start. I could start with something comfortable, something I knew, a culture that was mine, and from there I would learn. Because of Christianity, I have become kinder. I have become more patient. I've become I've become a better driver because I am more understanding. I have become more appreciative for life, more appreciative for everyone around me. All of the little things I find joy in. I used to come out here and when I would meditate, and I still do that, but when I used to, I would just go through all the things I was thankful for, and that's an incredible practice, and I still do it. I love doing that. But having this outstanding love for love, this love of life and everything in it has done wonders. I'm so much happier and realizing that love is God. God is love. God isn't a man in the sky, it's a feeling. And like I've said 5 times already, that feeling is love. So that's where I have been. Now, where I'm at right now is trying to critique what I have learned about Christianity. I would say I've learned about 80%, maybe 85. However, undeniably, there is still a lot left to learn. I have not read the Bible cover to cover. However, I understand fully its message. There are things I still do not understand. There is a lot I still do not understand. However, I do know its message and what it's trying to say. And I have critiques for the people sharing that message. And that will be the next couple videos on this channel. I don't know how many. I don't know how long it'll be until I make my next one. But that's where I'm at. That's what I'm doing right now. What I will be, that's also where I'm going. I'm also going to learn about Judaism and Islam. I know those two don't get along super well all the time, but they're two of the closest to Christianity. Jesus was Jewish, and Islam takes from Christianity as well, takes parts of it. So I'm gonna learn what I can from those while making videos about Christianity. But I would like to thank you for talking, and I will see you later.